Chapter 30. Before I donned the clothes Rashawn had given me, I bathed in cool water and waited for the strange heat coursing through my body to dissipate. My hands trembled as I slipped into the tub. I decided to report to Luli's early, and she welcomed me. A long line of patrons queued across the road so passers-by had to squeeze through. It wasn't lost on me that the time spent here concocting meals that buffed stats served a purpose many benefited from. But the appearance of the line snaking its way across the thoroughfare brought a new revelation. Things are getting bad. Was there a growth in the number of renegades who'd left the former governor's mansion after his dethroning and formed bands to pillage the country? Or were demons like the ones who sought out our farm the root cause of people taking up arms and returning to the once declining profession of adventuring? Something told me I'd find out soon enough. I slipped beneath the table, and to my surprise, Luli drew me in with one arm and gave me a quick, firm hug. Warmth coursed through my veins as I returned the embrace. I stepped inside. It wasn't until I'd cleansed my hands with the crystal she kept by her basin and slipped into my chair that I returned my focus to the interface message Shabana had interrupted when I leveled. You have learned a new agnostic spell, Flame Bindings. Draw on the fire of Enora to ensnare up to 2 enemies with fiery tendrils that burst from the ground. Type, Shadow Spell. Cost, 50 mana. Duration, 7 seconds. Cooldown, 15 seconds. This spell has diminishing returns when cast against the same target in 1-minute cycles. My jaw dropped at the implications. I'd learned a spell, but how did I use it? I glanced around the room as if I'd find a target to practice upon. Then I shook my head in derision. Something about the word flame negated my momentary lapse of reason. Idiot, I muttered. When the work was done, I walked in the dark of night back toward the academy. While I wondered if I might spy Master Welling in the same side alley where we'd first met, the lack of warmth as I passed by rendered the need to look moot. The way his aura touched me was unmistakable. When my HUD came up and I spied the gates ahead, I reconsidered returning to my room. After the event in the field, I didn't want to cross paths with my classmates. I didn't know how I would deal with the apprehension when it was time to return to Foundations of Magic or Constitutional Development. But the next day promised only carpentry for combatants, and there were fewer students from the light school in there. And Elrin had been banished because of his poor axe-wielding skills. After the briefest glance at the temple, I circled back around the main building to the field where it all happened. When my worst fears of people teaming up on me in the wake of the day's events came into play, I was drawn here. I walked over to the practice targets and spun an arm with 2 fingers. It whirled in a blur. Then I kicked the lower pole. I repeated the gestures low and high. Then I slipped the staff off my back, sized up my enemy, and went to work. The staff clanked, then the top arm spun. I slipped one hand down to change my grip, then brought the arm to a stop. My accuracy tightened up as I repeated the gesture, focusing only on the high spinning arm. Soon I was striking the pole on one side, then reversing and bringing it to a near stop. Your staff skill has reached rank 17. Nice. Soon I was lost in the activity. I switched to the low arm. It proved much more difficult to stop effectively, but I learned how to sweep the staff back in such a way as to reduce its recoil without changing my stance. For my efforts, I received 5 more ranks to the staff skill and even picked up a point to my melee attack rating, bringing it to 5. I studied my interface in wonderment. Would other melee weapons increase my attack rating more efficiently so it would keep pace with my staff skill? My thoughts were interrupted when a throat cleared behind me. I wheeled to find Master Rashawn standing behind me. She wore a green and gold robe and held a short scepter with a globe at the tip set in shining metal. Hello, Tess. Hi, Master Rashawn. I bowed. She smiled in response and gave a half bow of her own. I see you're practicing. Any skill points? I nodded. You know Master Renard is likely not to credit them to your passing score. The way I understood it, staff skills have nothing to do with my passing score. Maybe you can explain to me why it's called Constitutional Development when 50 stamina are required to pass. No matter how he tries to explain it, I can't make sense of the nomenclature. Perhaps because Constitution is the parent attribute of the stamina pool? Or perhaps it's because constitutional development sounds more interesting than stamina development. Professors are a heavy bunch. She shrugged. I wasn't in the meeting. A broad smile crossed her features, and although it might have lit the night when it reached her eyes, it never did. I sensed a motive for her visit. My theory proved out when the smile faded. Your staff echoes off the targets and can be heard halfway across campus. Oh. Warmth flooded my face. I sheathed my staff, then looked around. A shadowy figure stood near high bushes at the base of the stairs behind the library. I quickly returned my gaze to Roshan. Apologies, I'll stop doing it at night. Fine, but that's not my only reason for coming. I raised an eyebrow. I wonder if you'd join me in the chapel. She turned, then gestured with a hand crossing her body at the waist. Somehow, I didn't think I had a choice. Our sandals clapped against the cobblestones as she walked next to me in silence. When we reached the building, she opened the door. We stepped into the small room in the rear of the chapel. Low chattering echoed from the front as we passed quietly through the short hallway. A few robed figures in the front pews stood when we emerged near the altar. Most of the candles throughout the chapel were extinguished, leaving only those around the altar to cast light into the front pews. My knees quaked. Master Renard stood, the hood of his lily robe draped over his back.
Ah, here she is.
He raised a finger to beckon me over. Master Welling's lips tightened in one corner, reminding me of how my father would look when I'd spilled water I carried from the well to the kitchen. It was only the third time I'd laid eyes on Magister Lyra, but I hadn't seen her hair down before, and pure white streaks laced through her otherwise obsidian mane. Another woman who could have been her twin stood at the end of the pew in a lilac robe with white trim, the one who'd escorted me to my dorm room the day we arrived, Mora. My Constitution mentor gestured toward the center of the pew, so I sat there. The masters sat on either side, save for Roshan, who circled and leaned on the altar to gaze at me. Master Lyra cleared her throat. Congratulations on level 6, Contessa. My hands trembled, so I shoved them beneath my legs, then lowered my head in a nod. Thank you. Did you learn anything new? My gaze danced from face to face, then I nodded again. A spell of binding. Master Welling uttered a single word.
Which?
His eyebrows joined in a high arch above his eyes.
Which?
Flame bindings. He shot glances at the other masters. Each shook their heads in response.
Can you read it to me?
My voice quivered when I tried to speak, so I swallowed and started again. Draw on the fire of Enora to ensnare up to 2 enemies with fiery tendrils that burst from the ground.
See?
Master Renard thrust an accusatory finger toward me.
It is as I said. The red glow.
It was clear he referenced the aura surrounding my staff with the final strike against Elrin Zen. That's a bit of a leap, Magister Lyra interjected. She's only level 6.
She was level 5 at the time,
Master Renard said. He scratched the tip of one of his elven ears and turned his gaze away from the group to stare at a paneled wall. Which is even more proof your theory is flawed. The elf stood and wheeled around.
Pardon me, Magister Lyra, but which of us has access to the elven archives and spent most of his life reading the lore of ancient spells?
Magister Lyra's ears twitched with the pull of her sudden toothy smile. Her eyes shone despite the low light. Master Elf, I've spent the last decades in Brumhill dealing in rare magic tomes. I assure you I'm not so ignorant as you imply. She turned a hand over in her lap. My implication is based on my own experience. I've never heard of someone of such low level with no casting experience do what you claim she's doing.
Nor have I,
he grumbled.
But something is amiss in this one.
I noted how he glanced at everyone in the room, even turning his head to include Roshan, but avoided my gaze. The last thing I wanted was to make trouble for myself. I'd spent too many moments since arriving in Warrington doing exactly that. But the way they talked around me was beginning to grate on my nerves, and my knees would never stop shaking if I didn't relieve myself of the tension. Have I offended in some way? I didn't mean to do anything.
Tess,
Master Welling said.
You've done nothing wrong.
Unless she knew what she was doing, said the younger woman with features similar to Magister Lyra's. She cocked her chin toward me. Did you know what you were doing? On the field? During the duel? She nodded. I'm sorry, I still don't know what I've done, so no. Master Welling stood. He towered over the elven instructor.
The child is trembling in her robe. This is not the way.
He gestured with his hand so I would grasp it.
Come.
Roshan perked up. Where do you think you're taking her? Welling looked around the room.
It's apparent to me those schooled in the light have prejudged Contessa. and I would not see her suffer for what she doesn't yet control.
Roshan nodded, but her words contradicted the motion. I have rendered no judgment against her, nor have I changed my orientation. I want only what's best for Tess.
Huh!
Welling shot a glare toward Master Renard.
I wish I could say that for everyone. He's been in here wailing about.
He cut his words short.
Come, Tess. We will gather your things and prepare for our journey.
Magister Lyra's voice boomed. I am the Magister of this academy. Contessa of Milbury is my student and you aren't taking her anywhere. She rose, pointed at the pew, then allowed a deep breath to expel through her lips. Now, all of you cease your dramatic protestations against one another and sit. Roshan stepped down from the altar and slipped onto the pew with the others as they took their seats. Magister Lyra set an arm on my shoulder. Tess, I wonder if you'd be willing to do an experiment with me. Roshan shook her head. Not in this place of the light. Lyra shot a breath through her nose. And you claim you've passed no judgment. The women locked gazes for a long moment, but Roshan finally looked away. It was the first time I'd seen her back down from anything, which made me wonder at the extent of Magister Lyra's authority. What better place than one influenced by the light, after all? What do you want me to do? Lyra waved a hand toward Master Welling. You're the representative of the Shadow Council here, so this part is your domain. Please. Although he remained seated, Master Welling cocked his head to one side, signaling Lyra to move away. She took a giant step to the side.
Tess, equip your staff.
I slid the weapon from my shoulder and clutched it like Master Renard had illustrated during class.
Now open your interface to view your new spell.
I did. Flame bindings. Draw on the fire of Enora to ensnare up to 2 enemies with fiery tendrils that burst from the ground. Type, Shadow Spell. Cost, 50 mana. Damage, 35 HP per second. Duration, 7 seconds. Cooldown, 15 seconds. This spell has diminishing returns when cast against the same target in periods of less than 1 minute. The image of a woman in a brown robe twisting her hands at chin level then releasing orange energy from them appeared in the pane next to the spell. I focused as she repeated the gestures. Then I nodded. I have it. Master Welling has challenged you to a duel. Accept? Yes? No? My knees knocked together as if the ground shook, but I accepted.
Good. Focus on the icon next to its name.
He pushed up from the pew, then walked to the wall, away from the other masters.
Focus on me through it.
The circular icon depicted glowing orange ropes with yellow edges. When my gaze switched from the icon to Master Welling, the icon blurred, then became transparent. Through it, he came into focus. I mimicked the gestures with my hands. Warm heat rushed from my shoulders, then down to my fingers with such force. It was like the blood in my veins would burst from their tips. Roots of fire exploded from the temple floor and encircled the robed master's legs. You cast flame bindings. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 2. The encumbrances slipped back into the floor, leaving its surface flat and pristine. Drawson Welling resists flame bindings.
Did you see it?
Master Renard asked. Roshan nodded. Lyra nodded. See what? I asked. Master Welling's face stretched into a grin.
Your mana bar didn't move.
He looks happy. Roshan cast a scowl at Magister Lyra. Why does the Grand Master of the Shadow School look so elated? Doesn't this mean? Master Welling preempted the rest.
Yes, it means this young woman before us is tapping into the source.
Although I wouldn't have imagined his smile could stretch any wider, the creases in his cheeks deepened.
And she doesn't even know it.
Drawson Welling has forfeited the duel. You have defeated Drawson Welling in a duel. Magister Lyra slid down in her pew. A loose accent slipped past her lips when she spoke. All my life I tried to tap into the source, and this one just reaches down and channels it through her weapon. Unbelievable. Roshan scanned the crowd. Am I the only one who takes this seriously? Master Renard shook his head.
No, I'm with you, priestess. This situation will need to be remedied.
Remedied? No, it must be mitigated. She clapped her hands and everyone in the room jerked. I lowered my voice to a whisper. Could someone tell me what this source is? The masters shared strange looks, as if searching for the proper authority to address my question. Then Magister Lyra nodded at Master Welling.
Tess, Have you ever heard of ley lines?
Yes, only recently, but I can't claim any authority on the subject. Roshan butted in. They carry the blessed energy of the goddess and are fed by the waypoints across Enora. Her words came with the authority of expertise, but made little sense to me. I thought waypoints were map indicators. True, but there are also powerful sources of ley energy that take the form of trees throughout Enora. They wield such power, they have immortal guardians selected by the goddess herself. When adventurers level their combat classes to 20, they can tap into these ley lines to replenish their spirit pools every 24 hours. I scanned my interface. I don't have a spirit pool. You are not level 20. Roshan shook her head. Thank goodness for that. Master Welling cleared his throat.
Tess, the lava lines are a different source of power entirely. Less ethereal in nature. Their heat produces a different kind of energy that can be drawn on only by those with high affinities in shadow magic.
Like who? Roshan shared a glance with him and gave a short, quick shake of her head. Master Welling nodded.
I've only heard of one in Rubal who can wield the power.
One? Who? Who is not important, Roshan blurted. Welling sighed.
There was once a magister of this place when it was a university. She was a magician of awesome power, and her name was Delphine. She's no longer with us, obviously, but during her tenure, dark forces influenced her, and she ended up in a poor state. That's all I will say on that topic, but you should heed my tale as a warning. It's imperative you train and learn to control your power, and you must work with Roshan every day to keep darkness at bay.
You people talk like storybooks. Contessa, Magister Lyra warned, you do better to mind your tone. My back teeth clenched. These people I'd known only for days were discussing my fate, and the great leader of the academy fretted over my tone? Lyra squinted. I frustrated you. Good. Now, how will you handle your anger? My head jerked back. What? She set her hands on the pew and pushed herself to her feet. Although she stood at least 4 inches shorter, she glared up as if she held some physical advantage. You heard me, girl. Will you let your frustration flow? Will you let it feed your power and lash out? I took a step back, my focus darting face to face. What? No. I would never. My gaze dropped to the floor. Although my heart thumped against my ribs in a rapid tempo, I recognized every tingling sensation rippling through the muscles of my arms and legs as fear. The dread that I might end up alone again surged. The Magister stepped closer. Good. She set a hand on my shoulder, leaned in, then peered up at my downturned face until I looked her in the eye. Then she straightened and I raised my head. You were called here for a reason, Contessa. You grasp a power wielded by powerful creatures who would cast this entire continent in blight. While it's not my intent to scare you, this will make your recruitment of the utmost importance to them. Do you understand? I didn't understand. There was no basis for comparison. Still, I nodded. Masters Roshan and Welling told me they planned to meet with you regularly. I nodded. Because of your high magic potential and shadow affinity, Roshan wanted to ensure your emotional needs were being met. She understands what you've lost, and the priestess lives to serve people like you. On this you have my word. I shifted my gaze to Roshan. The priestess closed her eyes and gave a slow nod of reinforcement. Lyra squeezed my shoulder. Master Relling's role would be to help you tap into your mana efficiently so you get the most of your affinity. She dropped her hand, then sidled up next to me and faced the others. Now, I see no other option. If Tess is to thrive, we must all agree to the best course. I cannot make this decision without your approval. Master Renard crossed his arms and slouched. Roshan and Master Welling nodded their consent. Master Mora stood. How do we proceed? Magister Lyra drew in a deep breath and let it go. Master Renard, it's your desire Contessa stop attending your class? Joran Renard stood and lined up with the rest of the group.
I'm sorry, Tess, but it is. I will help you in any other way, but until you can control this strange power foreign even to my ancient race, I can't risk harm coming to my other students.
But they can't be harmed in a duel, can they? Renard smiled, taking me totally by surprise. It subtracted 20 years from his features.
You have no grasp of your potential, child. This is not a personal affront on my part. You must trust your teachers in this.
He walked forward, then up the 3 stairs leading to the altar.
Most important of all, we agree word of this strange turn of events be kept to this circle.
Magister Lyra nodded her agreement. The students of the Light School will be told Contessa moved to the Shadow School. I propose, in the interest of continuity, that Tess continue to attend her elective class where members of both schools are present. Roshan nodded her approval. Although deceit is not my favorite way to solve a problem, this pretense will serve our purposes. She will need to move out of her dorm and into my quarters in the temple. All due respect, Master Roshan, Mora said. I'm a shadow magician. If it suits, I'd have her move into my suite. I have a spare room and she'll have a private entrance. Roshan half bowed. As long as she visits me daily, I have no objection. Visit you daily? Live with Mora? Everything was changing, as if I hadn't gone through enough. My hands trembled. Lyra tilted her head to one side and raised a shoulder toward it. Of course, Tess, you have the option of leaving. Roshan shook her head. They would not welcome her at the Foundation yet. I would not put her into the wilds. I could have mentioned that, if I had such overwhelming potential, I might teach myself magic and go live how I desired, but something told me it was exactly the kind of thinking that might cause them to jump out of their footwear. Worse, they might take me up on it. Despite the release of tension during the last few moments as the Masters moved into planning mode, I knew the potential for its return burned just below the surface. Besides, my potential would be better realized here, among these people who seemed willing to make special accommodations for me. And if what Roshan said was true, I didn't want to be out there where dark beings would aim to recruit me. The obsidian shell of the dark demon standing in the field flashed in my memories, and I shivered visibly. Tess? No, Magister Lyra. I have no desire to leave the academy. But how will I be trained? I was just coming to that. Lyra cleared her throat. Masters Welling and Roshan discussed their plans with me before Master Renard reported what he saw in class today. We will execute that plan with minor modifications. Instead of reporting to class, you will report to Master Welling each morning at the same time. He will teach you what Master During would have covered in Foundation of Magic, as well as see to your physical training. After lunch, you will report to Roshan here. She will see to your spiritual guidance. Are we all in agreement? All the masters nodded, including Master Renard, which granted overwhelming relief. I liked him, and I didn't want any animosity painting our interactions. His suggestion that they keep the plan quiet reflected his support, and that was what I needed. Good. If curious minds inquire about Contessa, dismiss them immediately. We are the authorities here, and we need not engage.
Won't that raise suspicions?
Renard asked. I don't care. I'm too old and impatient for witless children's wonderings. Witless? What a questionable choice to lead an academy. Roshan raised a finger. There is just one issue, if I may. Lyra nodded for her to continue. Shabana. An unexpected tear welled in one eye, then the other flooded. Roshan tilted her head in curiosity. What is it? Lyra asked. They're friends, Roshan said. Neighbors. I sucked back the quivering in my throat. She can be trusted. We can't keep this from her. Roshan interlocked her fingers behind her back and paced. Lyra watched her, waited. Shabana is from the Fowler Foundation, Roshan said. So she is like family. I agree she can be trusted, but... She stopped pacing and raised a finger so it pointed skyward. It will be me who broaches the subject. Agreed? She set her sienna eyes on me. Yes, Master Roshan. I have one more request.
Ask it,
Renard said, and his tone delivered the sense he was ready to be done with this meeting. I want to keep my job with Luli Graples. Lyra shook her head dismissively. And why would we care? Go to work, don't go to work. Just show up to learn from Roshan and Drasen every day and go to your blasted carpentry class. She waved a hand. Now I'm hungry. The meeting's over. She slapped my shoulder. Come by if you need to talk. Otherwise, you're dismissed. Master Welling peered around the group to make sure no one was watching, then shot me a hard look coupled with a discreet shake of his head. He cocked it toward the front doors. I nodded understanding as the rest of the masters, save for Roshan, exited through the back. Once they were gone, Roshan nodded at Master Welling. My shop. He nodded.
Now that the administrative drivel is finished, come with us so we can tell you the whole story.
Hello there, this is Arlo Adams. I hope you're enjoying Enora Fireborn Book 1, The Source. I just wanted to remind you that I have a Patreon where you can listen to all of my YouTube audiobooks ad-free for as little as $3 per month. Even if you're not in a position to support me on Patreon but find entertainment value in the Enora universe, please subscribe to my channel and click the like button beneath the chapters you enjoy. Subscribing doesn't subject you to more ads and can even help you find more content like mine. Make sure to leave your comments and questions about my stories below. And as always, thanks for spreading the word about my channel and leaving your positive feedback. I really do appreciate it. Arlo out.